I'm Leanne Boschman. The first few poems I'm going to read are in a tradition that's often referred to as ekphrastic poetry, and it's defined as poetry that provides a commentary on visual work, visual art. And I've always been quite fascinated about these intersections between visual work, whether it's sculpture, painting, and so on, and poetry, and even dance and theater. This first poem came about through my participation in writing to an exhibit of photographs. And at first, I actually had a little bit of trouble knowing what I could say about them and relating to them. And then I decided just to focus on the shadows in the photographs. And this is Postcards from the Shadows. 1. Grammar lessons. Use shadow as a verb. Rain fell every day that month, fell slantwise, riverward, earth tilting. Soon we learned to paraphrase its mesmeric dialect, shedding our night clothes, how to shadow our way towards one another. Use shadow as an adjective. The thin whisper above Frida Kahlo's lips is so shadow. Consider also the following items. A foghorn's moan before midnight. River ash, night-scented stalk, black eggs of the honey creeper. 2. Eyeshadow. Try this. You don't need much, my older sister would say when she instructed me in the arts of deception. On any given day, we would slip out of the house, our eyelids the hue of ripe damson plums, the Mediterranean at Crete, or verdant young tea leaves. Did I say my favorite was railway tie gray? Did I mention I never had an older sister? 3. Shadow bird. In China's southwestern Xinjiang, the Voorhees nightjar has not been seen since 1929, a specimen that once could be held in the hand. It is perfectly possible that this elusive bird has evolved as a species that can be identified in the wild only by other Voorhees nightjars. Still, you may find yourself imagining its song. 4. Shadow colors. Shadow pink, less lustrous than shell pink, more naked than earthworms after an early morning shower. Echoes like wet zinnia petals on the same morning. Shadow brown, more scuffed than a leather of a leaves, is found knee-deep in bracken, can be described as shaly and be shed like a vagabond's coat. Shadow blue is a distant cousin of mirthless blue. Prolonged exposure to this hue may cause distrust of certain expressions such as win-win, a happy occasion. Shadow orange, brighter than topaz mined in ancient times, cannot be hurried. Like waking up in that bed in Mexico where your parents, gone these many years, once slept. 5. Shadowland. This tour is not for the casual adventurer or weekend cave explorer. You will rappel down an underground waterfall so deep you may lose track of centuries. Be startled by what feels like the cold flutter of a leathery wing. Realize it's your own heartbeat. Writers can take their work pretty much anywhere. If you have a notebook, your laptop, you can work outdoors, inside. It's really flexible. But I'm really fascinated by spaces where creation takes place. specifically studios, art studios. I love to see the work in its messy, experimental, half-finished or finished stages. And today I'm reading in my husband's art studio, Edward Epps' art studio. This next poem was published in Arc Poetry Magazine, fall 2019. It's called Portrait of the Artist. The wood stove was a rusted barrel, a loose hinged door, dented pipe, reaching to the ceiling of the studio that had been a machine shop, imprints of metal toolkits on the plank shelves, but now instead of the sturdy socket sets and saws, they held his palettes, paints, tins full of brushes. On that night you snapped open, became unhinged, said you couldn't take it anymore. Branches of jack pines overloaded with snow, bleary banks lining the sides of the highway, those frazzled nights driving home from work, one hand clenching the steering wheel, the other holding the car door open just enough so that you could see the center line of the highway. And it was just another blizzard, but he knew you were really mad that night, and he couldn't pay even one of the bills, but he wanted to give you something. So with the kids asleep in the house, he set up an easel, placed a bamboo cup full of pencils, watercolors, oil pastels in front of you. Then he took off his clothes, said, "Use whatever you want." It was too late. But you picked up a charcoal stick that had once been vine or willow that bent and wept before its slow burn, and you began to draw. This poem was published in Geist Magazine, spring 2021. Encaustic. What medium would you work in? A question you toss out on a weekend when we wander through neighborhood studios. If this weaving of words were to be exchanged for some other kind of making, perhaps the scissoring and jostle of cuttings into collage. I consider too washes of water and pigment that merge on vellum, stranding tiny particles of paint. Or the rough heft and wedging of clay, air pockets sealed, fine grit pried out. Pausing before a light-infused lake, I say, I am most drawn to this, the burning in of encaustic, its transparent glazes that cure to a glass-like sheen, melting layers that cannot be pried apart, beeswax and resin that hold both images and breath in the spaces between. Like the way two people can remain for years just out of touch, the way a water lily stem seems to waver beneath a frozen pond. And a woman, a wife, wants to say, see my spiral leaves, my radial petals that cup daylight, despite small fish nibbling, ooze and sludge of years, see me here. Shawnigan Lake is located on the traditional territories of the Malahat Nation and Cowichan tribes. And I like to observe how the lake, its very own entity, intersects with the human world. There was very early industry located here. There was a mill. Of course, there's summer recreation, and the lake is its own ecosystem that is part of a local watershed and home to a lot of wildlife. This is an older poem that I wrote about the lake. It's called Close of the Season. Blackberry stained fingers hold on to amber beads of late summer sun. I press my back into warm sand, smell hay in nearby fields. Out on the lake, a motorboat zigzags past, a last reckless ride of the season. Afternoon's sinewy stretch into darkness grows shorter each day. At midnight, ginger tea warms me. Beyond the black window, waves smash the dock, white froth where we swam only days ago. Ceiling creaks as upstairs the children dive into dreams, sandcastles wash back up on shore. Bones crack a ragged rhythm as I shift before sleep. Cold air seeps in, carries scent of chrysanthemums beginning to rot in the ground. Harvest moonlight reflected on cabins and trailers, deserted for the winter, all covered with night's starry sheet.